Good evening, everybody. Keith Engle here for TGI Sports Talk's College Sports Huddle. Right now, that means basketball and a little bit of football. Maybe we'll take a look at some college baseball. I don't know. We will as weeks go on. I apologize. For those of you who had the reminders for 6 o'clock tonight, I apologize. I have no idea. StreamYard keeps doing this to me, and we got up at the wrong time. So, again, I apologize. This show is at 7 o'clock on Wednesdays. Unless otherwise notated by yours truly. Want to welcome everybody tonight watching on Facebook, TGI Sports Talk Facebook page, on YouTube, on Twitter, watching on Northeast Streaming Sports on their Facebook and YouTube stream. And you'll also catch this show replayed at midnight tonight on their Roku channel. Get out there and download that Roku channel. Just go to the Roku app, look for Northeast Streaming Sports channel. You'll also catch it Saturday morning on Northeast Streaming Sports Roku. And we replay it now and again on the TGI Sports Talk pages as well. Also, Let's Talk Sports, who are on their YouTube feed tonight. We welcome all the groups as well. With quick heads up to check out places like the Sports Authorities. Check out The Bottom Line Sports, which has a really good podcast of their own. I watched the other night with Flo and his group, so thank you for that. And I like to give these guys a shout out because they support me, John Gonzalez at Sports Authorities, as well as really hundreds of other groups, really, that let me share my shows to their groups. So I appreciate that. Thumbs up, DDH, and also a quick shout out to our Ralph Williams at RW Media, and specifically his show, The Sports Corner, which is on Tuesdays from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern on WBVP 1230 a.m. Check that out. Ralph does some great stuff. Ralph pops on here. We'll get Ralph to come on for a little bit one day as well, especially when we have some really big Pittsburgh news to talk about. Tonight, wow, we'll get into your comments. And again, apologize for Facebook and Roku screwed me up with this 6 o'clock start time. Was not the way it was supposed to be. There was supposed to reminder go at 6. The show starts at 7. So I'm sure it's user error on my fault or my part. So anyway, college basketball. I'm going to have to eat some crow tonight. We're down to the Final Four for the men. We're going to have UConn and who they play? UConn and North Carolina, Purdue, and my God, how can I not remember this? What a memory these days, right? Sorry, Purdue and North Carolina State, UConn, Alabama. We're waiting for the UConn Purdue matchup. But the women, congratulations to UConn and North Carolina State women both getting to the Final Four. An exciting women's final regional here in Albany and elsewhere around the country. Iowa avenges a loss in the final last year to LSU and gets to the Final Four, where they'll play UConn and Gino Auriemma's historic program. South Carolina gets to the Final Four undefeated, looking to get 2 out of the last 3 after they were upset, I believe, by Iowa last year. And they'll get North Carolina State women in the semifinal. And I have to tell you, record viewership. I've been poo-pooing, not really. I've been saying you can't compare women's basketball and men's basketball as far as popularity. And I'm beginning to think I'm wrong. The viewership Monday night was the highest rated college basketball game ever on ESPN. The women's tickets for the Final Four are selling for more than the men. I'm not sure the reason for this, other than the popularity of Caitlin Clark, obviously. The South Carolina undefeated season, the UConn's historic program being there, not to mention North Carolina State. I'm excited about it, and I haven't really, I'm not putting the women down at all. And I got some comments about Kim Mulkey and Rebecca Lobo. Don't bash the cities you go to that host you, and they do a fine job, by the way, of running the tournament in the building. If you don't like the city, just shut up and go away. I doubt Baton Rouge, Louisiana is that whole much different, that much different than Albany, New York. I'm not saying this is New York City or LA or Vegas, but you don't need to be on national TV, Rebecca Lobo, and bash in Albany, and you don't need to do it, Kim Malarkey, in any event. This ticks me off. I'll make jokes about where we live. All right. You go home and make jokes about where you live. That's how it works. Especially when the city is showing you they do a great job. Gary Holly and his crew down at the MVP Center do a great job of putting on these events. That's why the men keep coming back here. The women have been here a couple times. Anyway, we'll get into all that. And I apologize. I'll start to say I'm wrong if I'm wrong. And I see Rick Sherlock. We'll see if he's picking up on my mea culpa. Good evening, Dave Guyette. Good to have you with us. Yankees do win today, 6-5-11. That's for another show, but Yankees 5-1. Good evening, Rick. Good to have you with us. Yeah, I don't know what to make of this. I mean, they made it sound in the original report I read and heard, Rick, that this was a one-time thing. But people who followed LSU, and I hope John DeLon's with us here tonight at some point. And I don't want to get into a big debate about the anthem and all that, but it's a story that needs to be talked about a little bit. They didn't come out for the anthem, and the people who follow and she said, Kim Malarkey, happened to say that, they got a certain routine they go through, and, the time they did the anthem didn't fit their schedule. Well, it turns out that they often don't come out for the national anthem, even at home. So maybe more to come from this, and I don't know who to blame. I tried very hard to separate political statements from sports, and you have to today if you're going to be a sports fan. And I have my very strong opinions about things. I've always said about the national anthem itself, it's so important. Why? If you remember, before this became a big controversy, whatever it was, 5 or 6, maybe 7 years ago now. The networks didn't even stick around for the national anthem half the time, except for big games. But weekly games, they didn't stick around. So anyway, it is classless. Who knows what the reason is? No, they said there wasn't a political statement. So if you're not making a statement, then why sit it out if that's the reason, right? I'll take her at her. Maybe she just doesn't care. I don't know. Whatever. I'm not a big fan of her. She's a great coach. She's won four national championships, I think. 3 with Baylor, 1 with LSU. Great coach. Doesn't always make you a great person. Chris F. Grave. I can see Tackle Fall getting drafted in the NBA, but not high in the draft, lacking athletic flexibility. It's funny. The NBA draft seems to me to have more misses than any of the drafts. There's only 2 rounds in it, and it seems like there's more misses than there are in any other draft. Maybe baseball has more, but it just seems odd. But again, he's and some kids are just you can get away with that lack of athleticism on the college level, right? It's a little bit harder once you get to the pros, and everybody's as athletic or more athletic than you, and hustle can still get you someplace, but I like to watch him play. Anyway, the Final Four, we had, let's look at the games from last weekend or last week, right? Where are we surprised? Let's start in the East. We had, it's the women. We'll start with the men. I'm going to start with the men. I did a little mea culpa and said the women are very popular. I want to see if it's sustainable, though. Caitlin Clark's gone after this year. Angela Reese is gone after this year. Now, I expect LSU, I expect UConn, I expect South Carolina to stay very good programs. And they have been building their success. I said this all along, even when I was arguing that it wasn't on a par with the men. You've got to sustain it, and we'll see. They've done a great job this year, without a doubt. Last few years of building this up, and now you see if you can keep it. Somebody asked me last week, it might have been Chris, I'm not sure, but somebody asked me, might have been on this show, or it might have been on the Sunday Stream of Consciousness. It couldn't have been, it had to be on this show. What game I saw being the most defensive struggle, and I think I had picked the game I picked was probably NC State and Marquette, and it turned out to be Houston and Duke. It was a really well-played game, very good defense. Houston did lose their star guard Shed at the end of the game, but they had trouble putting the ball in the basket, and Duke's defense had a lot to do with that. And then Duke ran into his NC State squad, who beats Oakland, then beats North Carolina. I'm sorry, then beats Marquette, ranked second. Duke ranked fourth. NC State was probably one of the last teams in the field. Was definitely one of the last teams in the field, but not an at-large because they had an automatic bid. They would not have made the tournament without winning the ACC. So they've gone on this 8-game winning streak now. Their coach was on the verge of getting fired. And now they beat Marquette and Duke, and they're in the Final Four, and they'll play Purdue, which I do not see. I mean, Burns is an interesting player. He looks like a football player playing basketball. Very efficient, though. Seems like a good kid. Hard worker. And they've made it work with some good guard play and his play inside. They've made it work. Purdue's guards have played a lot better than I thought they would in this tournament. And Eddie is just, there's nobody can stop him. And I'm not sure that Burns, and maybe I don't put Burns on Eddie because you may follow Burns out of this game if you put him on Eddie. I don't see, and I've said this a bunch of games in a row, I'm not sure NC State can stay with Purdue. Purdue's done a great job getting to the Final Four, their first Final Four since 1980. Joe Barry Carroll was the big center on the team that year, if you remember. Lee Rose, I believe, was the head coach. NC State has not been to the Final Four since 1983 when that miraculous, and again, it seemed very similar to this one as far as, they've been playing winner-go-home games since before this tournament started. Their season would have been over in the ACC tournament in 1983 as well. Jimmy Valvano's championship team. They went on a great run. Had some really close scares in the NCAA tournament. So this is a fun matchup. On the other side, you've got UConn, who I said early in this process was going to have a hard time repeating, only because it's hard to repeat. Oh. It's happened twice in let's see, 7. If I go back, so that's 50 some years. It's happened twice in the last 50 years. 50-ish years, maybe late high 40s. I'm not good at math, as we know, but UConn is really good, man. They aren't just beating people; they're annihilating people. I heard a stat, and I mentioned it Sunday, that this team, since the beginning of last year's tournament, which they won in the last 10 games, all 6 of last year's and this year's 4, they have trailed for a total of 5 minutes and 11 seconds. That's remarkable. Nate Oates' team at Alabama has really played well after an up and down season. They played a tough physical game. I don't think UConn's going to be fazed by that. North Carolina, Alabama, I think, was the best game of the Elite Eight games in my mind. It was back and forth. Both teams would take a small lead and look like they were maybe going to pull away with some momentum, but Alabama has found a way to get there. But I think we're destined for UConn and Purdue on the men's side. And we're going to talk about the women, too, in a second, because, again, I've had to make a mea culpa here a little bit about my opinion the state of women's basketball. Going over the schedule last week, holy jumping deuce. Do I see your point? Way too many teams in the finals. Going over the schedule last week. I don't. Oh, you're talking about. I'm not sure what we're talking about, Chris. Are we talking about the women and the way I was talking about how the higher seeds were all, would win every game? I mean, I think on that side, there's. Where did I put my women's bracket here? Did I dump it? There it is. You got a 1 and 3 and a 1 and a 3. But you look at the schedule, it was 1 against 5s. I mean, there was nothing in the Elite 8, right? There was nothing lower than a 5 seed. No, I take that back. Yeah, 5 seed, Colorado. So, I mean, you don't see, you just look through the games. And again, I talked about and I still think that's a problem for this tournament, or for the women's tournament itself, for it to be as popular as the men's and maintain it. Your first round can't have 31 out of 32 games. The higher seed wins, the better seed wins. I mean, you need some upset possibilities. I think that's what you're talking about, Chris. If I'm wrong, please tell me. Danny Fuller out there on the West Coast got Purdue to win it all. I don't know, man. I mean, Eddie is a unique player, especially in this day and age, right? We don't have centers, true centers as a rule. You do here, and and again, let's assume it's UConn. How will they match up with him? But I think UConn's just got so many guys they can throw at you, and there's so many different ways they can beat you. And they're just on a great roll. And I'm just not sure they're going to lose now. And I told Rick, I know Rick's a big UConn fan. I just didn't think this team could win, only because of how difficult it actually is to win, to repeat. But they haven't just eked it out. By the way, I believe they're the first team since 2007 to win the tournament and then get to the Final Four the next year. So again, I've talked about some of the things that are going against them, but they've beaten those odds every single time. John DeLon, Purdue needs to lose. Smart kids winning championships just rubs him the wrong way. Being from the SEC, I can understand your thinking. John, there was a quick question that I'll throw at you. This became a nationwide story, but it started here in Albany. Kim Mulkey, I'll use her correct name out of respect to you, John. And not my new name for her. And her team did not come out for the start of the national anthem. She said it was just a matter of timing, and they have certain things in schedule they want to keep to before the game. And it was reported the next day that they don't come out for most of or any. I don't remember exactly what I heard, but most of the games they don't come out for the national anthem at all. You being an LSU fan, I'm curious if you have a comment on that. And I don't get as worked up about this type of thing as a lot of people do, because I've got my brain. So, because otherwise, I'm not going to enjoy sports anymore if I let these statements affect it. And I still want to enjoy sports. So I find a way I like it, but I find a way to disconnect the two. But I'm just curious if you have a thought on that, or something that I don't know about what went on. Reese will be and so will Caitlin Clark. I think Caitlin Clark will be a big star to WNBA, and I think Angela Reese will as well. Both are going into the draft. Angela Reese, it is Angela Reese, right? Announced today she was going pro. I will say this again. There were some questions that have come up on different shows. Is it worth using a second round draft pick in the NBA draft on on Caitlin Clark. No, she's a great women's player. But the women, the best women, and I know this will come up, and I'm always sound like an ass when I say this, or get made out to be a misogynist or whatever you want to call me. The best women can't play with the best men. They can't play with the worst men. If that was true, you'd see women playing on men's team in college now. It's just, again, it's just a fact. But that doesn't mean the women's game can't be popular. It's more popular than I wanted to give it credit for, apparently. And again, shame on me. Purdue has been Danny's pick all year. Big UCLA fan, we know. But look at a lot of pressure on Purdue, too, because, Eddie's senior year, player of the year last year, probably the player of the year this year. The Wooden Award probably will go to Eddie again this year. Have not had a lot of success in the tournament, and Matt Painter's 18 years now on the bench. And for them to get to the Final Four was huge. And hopefully that's not enough for this team. I don't think it is. And plus a great F-bomb by Eddie in the post-game interview on the court. Bodkins all over the Iowa Hawkeyes. Caitlin Clark's an amazing women's basketball player. Please don't tell me she could compete with the men. She can't. But is what it is. Does Caitlin Clark need a title to cement her legacy as top 3 or 5? I don't think it would hurt. Nick, and welcome to Nick, and check out the Bodkin Show on Let's Talk Sports. Nick does a great job with his shows and has some great guests and some great takes on sports and some interesting antics as well. I like Nick's style a lot. So, listen, who's the greatest player of all time right now? I couldn't even tell you, to be quite honest with you. I mean, if I had to pick somebody, it would be somebody who won, because that's who I know. Rebecca Lobo. Reggie Miller's sister. I can't think of her name now. Great college player. There's obviously, but they all the people that I can think of won titles. And I think Caitlin Clark's going to be remembered because she was just a phenomenal player over quite a period of time. Another advantage the women have over the men is they don't come out after their freshman year. They stay 4 years or 3 years in Reese's case. But, I think she'll have some staying power either way. But I think she burns for a title. That was a hard fought game they had against LSU last year in the title game, because I do watch the women's game. Kenny's not with us tonight, but at least not yet. But, they packed the MVP Center here. They had a record audience on ESPN for that LSU Caitlin Clark game. And listen, if it was Iowa and LSU with no Caitlin Clark, I don't believe the audience would have been as big. So she is a big deal. John DeLong, they've been dodging national anthem all year. That's what I had read. I honestly don't like the players on the current women's basketball team at LSU. Bunch of woke idiots. Well, we know we have a lot of that in sports. Again, I've got some issues with. I have more issues with Kim Mulkey and her scorched earth policy. Nobody can write about her and her. I would say, John, that she doesn't appear to be woke. I can tell you that. But my problems with her aren't over those types of things. My problem is, if people want to honestly report who you are and what you've done, and you're going to threaten to sue them, I get it. That's the country we live in. I have a hard time when you come to a city like Albany, New York, who shows you nothing but the best hospitality, has a really first-class facility, and they run a really good show. Gary Holly and the team down there at the MVP do a great job with these tournaments. And Kim Mulkey and Rebecca Lobo on ESPN trash Albany, basically, at different points during the weekend. Some of the coaches really appreciated what was done for them here. And some coaches just, they think they're above, a city the size of Albany. We should be in Vegas, I guess, all the time. I don't know. Angela Reese lost the Iowa game. She took way too many bad shots. There's no doubt in my mind. And a lot of people have talked about this. And again, everything becomes a race question, right? Which to me doesn't need to be. These are just two basketball players. Caitlin Clark's a better basketball player than Angela Reese because she stays within herself. Again, she gets out of control. And by the way, kudos to her father. If you saw, I don't think we brought it up on this show, really ripping into her 2 weekends ago for her constant complaining to the referees. Told her to shut up and play the game. That's how you parent, by the way. Oh, you're welcome, Nick. Certainly appreciate everything that you do. Good stuff over there. Cheryl Miller, thank you. So, again, I would think Danny Fuller would think Cheryl Miller was a GOAT as she went to UCLA. Great player. Parker, great player. Rebecca Lobo, great player on a championship team, even though I can't stand her now. And by the way, some of the Albany restaurants and taverns are trying to start up it will never happen, a boycott of ESPN and take it off all their TVs and their bars. I don't see it happening. John, I don't think Clark could play. No, she couldn't. She does move like a man. Basketball moves, I take it, you mean? I would, again, total package. And again, I haven't spent a lot of time. I watched it, when we get to the Final Four and stuff, and I haven't really watched it. I remember watching Cheryl Miller play and Candace Parker and all great players. I mean, I do think Caitlin Clark is probably the best of them. I mean, to the next question, I mean, does she have lasting staying power as being thought of as the best player, women's player ever? I'm not sure without the title. With the title, I think she cements it. Without it, maybe there's something missing on her resume. I don't remember. And Danny, you would know if Cheryl Miller ever won a title. Candace Parker, we know did. We know Rebecca Lobo did. I was a big fan of Sue Bird. Better a professional player, I think, than a college player. And anybody who's more versed in the women's game than I can certainly talk about that. I think we can get a bullet into that men's versus women's in sports. If you're a misogynist, say hello to the mute button. Bulky, no, she's not. We know from her, again, from the media, and again, yes, the Washington Post we know is she calls it a hit piece. I mean, all they're doing is reporting the things that people have spoken up and said she has done or said. Again, people are entitled to their opinions, right? In my mind, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I don't have to like them. I'm certainly not woke. I am a conservative American, but I don't have a problem with gays. I don't care. We do take it too far when it comes to the LGBTQ community, and I don't want to get into this too deeply, right? But I don't think that. And again, now John will probably jump all over me because I'm okay with gay relationships. I don't care. It doesn't affect me. And again, I'm a conservative Republican, but maybe I'm more of a libertarian because I want the government out of my life. So who knows? Cheryl, that's what I thought. I thought Cheryl won some titles out there. So I know Danny's gonna stick with his guns and say Cheryl Miller is the best player of all time. Caitlin Clark, I think she needs to win a title. I think this Danny and Nick has cemented for me that Caitlin Clark, as great as she is, maybe needs a title to really cement her legacy. Danny says Cheryl was the best all-around women's basketball player ever. At the time, and Reggie went to UCLA, we know. Cheryl might have been a better basketball player than Reggie then. I don't know. No, I don't think. I mean, again, as great as she was, on the worst UCLA team, she couldn't make the team. So, anyway, it's all good stuff. I do, again, congratulations to NC State and UConn for getting teams into both these Final Fours. Tremendous. You don't see that often. UConn, I think it's happened to probably a few times because the women's team has been dominant for so long, and the men have had enough good teams to get to Final Fours the same year. I don't know. The big stories, the big disappointments to me in this tournament, Marquette disappointed me. I thought Marquette should have handled North Carolina State and been prepared for that. Shaka Smart disappointed me. They didn't seem ready for North Carolina State. The momentum that North Carolina State is on, other than Kolek, who played really well. I said he had to play well, and I had Marquette in the Final Four. Not winning, but I had them in the Final Four. Very disappointed in that result. I thought Duke could give Houston a game. Once I watched the tournament, I had Houston losing actually to Gonzaga, I think, in that. I guess it would have been the Marquette in that grouping. I did have Gonzaga beating Purdue. So they disappointed me a bit after they played so well the first two rounds. We know Kansas was a big disappointment. I mean, anybody. How about Illinois? Illinois was scrappy. They'd made UConn and helped. And again, UConn wasn't playing well either. But you can never discount what the other team's doing to help you maybe look like you're struggling. At 23-23, Illinois is in this game, giving UConn a scare into the second half. You can't give up 30 consecutive points. I don't remember anybody in an Elite Eight. I may not remember anybody in an NCAA tournament game ever. A 16-1. I'm sure it probably happened somewhere. But I don't remember anybody running off 30 consecutive points. UConn's really good. Danny Hurley's done a great job recruiting. Danny Hurley's done a great job of getting this program back to a point of prominence. Really impressed with Danny Hurley. Just stop baiting the other team's fans, and I'll be happy. Another SEC team does get to the Final Four in Alabama, who I thought had a better team this year. I think Nate Oates did a better job coaching this year than he did last year. And I still love his little nod to Wimp Sanderson with the jackets. What's the word I'm looking for? It's not checkered. There's another word. Checkered. We'll call it checkered jackets. I love that little nod that he does there. So Alabama played well, Carolina, and beating a red-hot Clemson team. I like the way Clemson played. I thought they had a chance to beat Alabama, at least cover the spread. They lost by 7. The spread was 6. Tennessee showed us they just can't get the ball in the basket enough. They did come back and scare Purdue at the end, but in the end of the day, Eddie was too much, and Tennessee just didn't shoot the ball well enough throughout this game, to be able to beat a really good Purdue team. So we end up with some pretty good basketball. Here's my take on the final. Purdue will handle North Carolina State. Cinderella slipper will fall off this week. If Burns is asked to stay with Eddie, he's going to get in foul trouble. And hopefully they have a different plan. Otherwise, Purdue goes to the final. UConn, I do not think will win by 30 again against this Alabama team. Very scrappy, very tough. They play a physical game. And if the referees let them play, maybe they can keep this game close. If not, UConn wins easily. So you got the UConn Purdue. I do not see it. Now that we've gotten to the Final Four and I've got nothing left to play for, I'm going to UConn to repeat. They're just too deep and too good. On the women's side, I'm going to take Caitlin Clark in the semifinal against Gino Emmer's UConn team. Listen, we haven't talked a lot about UConn the last few years as Caitlin Clark and LSU and South Carolina have kind of taken over the stage from Gino and his Lady Huskies. But this is still a good basketball program. There's a lot of good players here. They've done a great job to get to this Final Four. But I think Caitlin Clark, again, I think it's important that she gets this tournament win to really cement her legacy in the women's game. On the other side, North Carolina State's played very well, but South Carolina's been really good. South Carolina, remember, knocked out of the tournament 2 years ago, or last year, excuse me, by Iowa in the Final Four, I believe. They were looking to repeat, and now they're looking to get 2 out of 3. South Carolina is going to be tough. And I do think South Carolina will beat Caitlin Clark in Iowa in the final. So there's my picks. Take them for what they're worth. What else is going on in the world of college basketball? There was some rumors, and again, I don't know. I know one of these reports was at least it was about Bill Self stepping down. It was an April Fool's joke, but there is some pressure on Bill Self to get Kansas back to some kind of semblance of what they were in the past, and this team has been very thin for the last 3 years, and really since COVID. They've had trouble getting a team that goes more than 5 or 6 deep. Very difficult. We talked a little bit again. One of the things that I'm shocked at again as I continue to try to defend the men. The average price of a Final Four ticket was $2,323 for the women. The men was $1,000. That's kind of interesting. They're playing at the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse in Cleveland. When their men are playing at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. Overall average ticket price for the men's semifinal is $993 compared to $636 last year. And this year, for the women, it's $1,131 is the average price compared to $400 for the same period last year for the women. Another interesting, plus for the women. The portal is full. We'll get to that at another date. We may go a little short tonight as I'm not feeling my best, and I've got to go on later with Sonia Pearson on the on her show on Northeast Streaming Sorts. So please check that out at 9:00. I'll share that stream as well. On my pages. Detroit Mercy, who had fired their coach, hired Michigan State's Mark Montgomery to be their new head coach. I feel like we had more head coaching news, too. I know that Chris Mack is back in the game at Charleston, which is important. Zach Edey, Dalton Netsch are the top Wooden finalists and All-Americans. Netsch is from Tennessee, of course, and Purdue is where Edey comes from. Edey became the first player with 40 points, 15 rebounds, and a 60% field goal shooting game in the NCAA tournament since Alvin Hayes back in 1968. Congratulations to him. Oh, Andy Elfeld is the other guy. Andy Enfeld left to what would be a Big Ten now to go to the ACC and coach SMU. Now, he may be getting out ahead of the posse as things in USC were not going all that well. They did have a decent run at the end of the year, won a couple games in the Pac-12 tournament, but then got blown out, I think, by Arizona. Andy Enfeld, who you remember, from a decade ago, at least a decade ago, I would say, got Florida Gulf Coast off to got them on the map by getting to the Sweet 16, and a great job. But he's taking a job at SMU, who's headed to the Atlantic Coast Conference, and is looking at a 36-year drought of not winning an NCAA tournament game. They had Larry Brown coaching for a while and had some good teams, but we'll see. Trojans, again, just 15-18 this year before Enfeld left. Bronny James, and by the way, he'd won 20 games for 4 consecutive years before this, so Enfeld can coach a little bit. It's going to be interesting to see what he does with SMU. It's also going to be interesting to see what happens with Bronny, whether he's staying at USC or whether he's going to hit the portal. I'm going to tell you something, and I've said this before on this show and other shows. I'm cutting Bronny James some slack until I see what he can do. With a full season, he was hurt. I'm not hurt. Remember, he had the heart issues, which led to him playing about a half a season this year and never really getting it into gear. But he's also got the specter of his father playing right there in the same city. And I think Bronny would probably do well for himself by getting out away from his father. Transfer to the middle of the country somewhere. Transfer to a really good Big Ten team. And get out of Los Angeles and get out of your father's shadow for a little bit. And then we'll see what Bronny's got. I'm not willing to pass judgment on this kid, good or bad, yet. So just not willing to do it. What else is going on with the men? Anything else important? LeBron talked about Bronny having a tough decision what to do. Speaking of Kansas, Zeke Mayo, who's former South Dakota State star guard, has committed to Kansas. That alone's not going to get it done. Drake has hired a new coach. We didn't talk about this maybe last year, but they had to replace their head coach in DeVries this year. Had a great run at Drake. He's moved on to where'd he go to? Help me out. West Virginia. And he'll also be bringing his son along with him, who's a really good, one of the best players in college basketball. So West Virginia may make a quick recovery, but Drake did replace him with Ben McCullum, who is now the 30th coach in Drake history, and a pretty tough act to follow. He did coach last at Northwest Missouri State in Division II, so we'll see what they can do there. Very interesting stuff to talk about there. What do you got here, Chris? Oops, sorry. Warren Sapp joined Colorado's coaching staff. I want to get on this. We want to get into some football. I did this news. This was news a few weeks ago. Deion must have promised a full buffet in the film room. Deion, I don't know. There's a lot of stories coming out of Colorado that Deion is not like totally sold into, what it takes to turn around a major college football team. That he doesn't hit the recruiting trail, that he wants to live and die by the portal. And that's not sustainable in a major college environment. You can solidify your team through the portal. You can maybe turn a team around quickly for a short period of time. I mean, you saw that they got off to a great start last year against some not so great competition, but it quickly went in the crapper. I mean, they've got holes all over the offensive line. I mean, his son was, he's lucky he survived the season. And the talk is that Deion is not visiting any kids on the recruiting trail. His assistant coach is doing all of it. And believe me, in every program I know, the grunt work is done by the assistant coaches when it comes to recruiting. But the coach, Nick Saban, would go sit in a kid's living room when he wanted to close the deal. the head coach is still the closer in a lot of cases when you're going after these 5-star guys. And Deion's not willing to put in the work. So there's a lot of talk about that, and it being a problem in Colorado, and that he's not totally sold into, what the deal is there. That's a good question. Are we talking about basketball or football? Again, and I like both conferences. I think they moved. I don't think they moved a mile. They moved somewhere between an inch and a mile. Not a great showing in the tournament, but a great showing in the regular season and getting teams to the tournament by the Mountain West, if we're talking about basketball. And I think that they've shown that they have a chance to be just a notch below taking over for the American Conference in both football and basketball, taking over for the American Conference as that conference that's just a notch below the power conferences. I like what they've done in hiring coaches, both in basketball and football. You've got some of the most respected coaches in football in the Mountain West. Guys like Calhoun. I was going to say Winningham, but he's with Utah, and they haven't been out in the Mountain West in years. You just saw the Sapp thing on. Yeah, it was a few weeks ago, and it didn't make huge news. But does anybody think Warren Sapp is really going to do the work? He didn't do the work he needed to do to be a TV analyst. In my mind, he was just lazy. Great football player, but I don't see him as a great, have a great work ethic, burning to be a great coach and motivate kids. I don't know. We'll see. I just smashed my stress ball, and all the ick is coming out of it now. But that's a good story. What else is coming out of college football, by the way? Blast. That's all we had. A Bob Sapp back in us. We had Bob Sapp back in the spotlight. What about Bob Stoops? How did Bob Stoops? Maybe he's smart. I mean, he had coaching in one of these. I don't even remember which one, the USFL or UFL, or Bob Stoops is still coaching, I think, one of these teams. Why would Bob Stoops be doing that when Bob Stoops could coach anywhere he wants? I never have been able to put my finger on this. Bob Stoops is a great coach. Don't get it. We got some news around around college football. Northwestern, they filed a motion to dismiss a $130 million wrongful termination suit filed by Pat Fitzgerald, setting up a potential trial for next year. Listen, I think Pat Fitzgerald's going to have a chance here because from everything I've read, the stuff that was going on there, while you are the final, the buck stops here when you're the head coach, and you've got to have institutional control and things like this. There's a lot of people, a lot of influential people in college football that have Pat Fitzgerald's back, and it's going to be interesting to see if this goes to trial, how this works out. And a great job by Northwestern last year under very difficult circumstances, and Coach Braun there getting a full-time gig now. Good job by him. The ACC has hired veteran college sports executive Tom Pernetti as the league's next commissioner. Listen, these jobs are, I don't know. I wonder what is he making? These are the jobs you want, man. Jim Phillips came from Northwestern. He's the outgoing commissioner of the ACC and done a great job, by the way. The ACC is still a power conference. They've got a decent football contract, not compared to what the Big Ten and the SEC are certainly taking in these days. But they've done a great job, and we'll see how that holds up in court, of keeping the Clemsons and the FSUs and North Carolinas, for that matter, being able to just jump away with these buyout clauses that they have. I know there's a term that's slipping my mind right now, but we'll see. What's very interesting is, John, you talked about Warren Sapp coming in. He's listed as a graduate assistant coach. So I don't know that he's even getting paid. Sanders added the 51-year-old Sapp to his staff as a graduate assistant, which paves the way for him to work on the field with the team. Sapp is taking classes, introduced himself to the Buffaloes as Senior Quality Control Analyst. That is a mouthful, isn't it? But the role would limit his involvement on the field. So we'll see what happens there. He's a graduate assistant. So my guess is they're not paying him a nickel. That's kind of interesting. What do you got, John? I hear Fitzgerald was found employment at a car wash manager in North Hollywood. Oh, my God. Here's the thing. I understand a little bit. If he wins this case, I mean, you ask why $130 million. Well, Pat Fitzgerald was getting well paid, not just Northwestern, but Pat Fitzgerald's name came up every year when it came to openings in the NFL. And his future earnings would have been huge. So that's why he's got this big number for damages that he's looking at here. So I know what you're going to say, John. And the NCAA in football, in basketball as well, already. And again, it's the SECs and the Big Tens of the world looking to expand these tournaments. And I'm glad that the college football playoff, which is separate from the NCAA, it's very important to remember the big differences between these two tournaments are: one is run by the NCAA, and that's basketball, and the other one is not have anything really to do with the NCAA except their teams play in the conference or the college football playoff. The college football playoff, it is its own separate entity. And they're standing up to Jim Sankey and his ilk about demanding wanting the expansion to 14 teams and demanding that they get at least multiple automatic bids to the tournament. Come on, earn your way in. Earn your way in. Or you become John DeLong's participation trophy team. Brad Kitson, well, they get paid. You think Warren Sapp, the money Warren Sapp's going to get paid for this is, Warren Sapp money? So I don't know. I'm really unsure why he's doing this. I mean, he is going to school apparently for something. And I don't think Warren Sapp's a stupid guy, but I mean, he's done some stupid stuff. But I don't know. What else is going on in the world of college football? Louisiana, we talked last week about Charlie Baker wanting to ban prop bets. We all know that these leagues and even the college, the NCAA is in bed with DraftKings of the world and the gambling sites. Charlie Baker, the president of the NCAA, new president of the NCAA, basically, has wanted to ban this. The first state to do it that has legal gambling is Louisiana, who's now said no more prop betting at all. And to me, if there's going to be a college scandal, it's not going to be on the fixing of games. It's going to be on the fixing of these prop bets. Let's see what they said. If I can, yeah. I mean, it's very easy. Blow a couple of shots. If if the prop bet is on so and so to be the high score, you can easily not score that many points and still help your team win, right? It will affect the outcome of games, but to me, it's one of the easiest places that you can see. I think a new scandal breaking out in college sports. So I think getting prop betting. You're never going to get rid of the betting now. Once they're in, they're in. There's too much money involved. Everybody knew that it was being done, and that's what has driven professional football, college sports for a long time. A lot of it is driven, and I know there's a lot of hardcore just fans like myself. Even though I make a bet now and again, that isn't. I rarely watch the games I bet on. And John DeLong are real fans, but we all know to get the really big audiences and whatnot, gambling is required. Yeah, that's the yeah. What is it? I was looking for that. I was looking for that in the article. I'm trying to remember what Butte did. I can't remember. I'm trying to find it in this article. Yeah, I'm not finding it. And again, one of the reasons, and Zach Edey, speaking of Zach Edey from Purdue, he was asked about being harassed on social media and online by bettors who have lost bets on games, lost prop bets because Edey didn't get enough rebounds or enough points or enough blocks. I mean, these things, people are just out of control, right? What did Booty do? I can't remember. Yeah, I thought it was going to be part of this article, but it's not. So maybe do me a favor and fill me in and remind me, because this old mind of mine is totally gone a blank. I know what went on here, but it's just not hitting me. What else we got in college football going on? Oh, USC trying to turn things around. They are trying to stay hot on the recruiting tail, where they've done pretty well, especially defensively. It appears they get another top 100 recruit in Mattia Tiogi. I'll never say his name. He's a 4-star linebacker. They've done pretty well in boosting up the defensive side of football, which they have to. I mean, Lincoln Riley's tenure at USC has been mediocre at best. And for him he needs to be able to turn this around, or he's not going to be there. You can't just go out and score a bunch of points. I mean, his defense cost him 2 years ago from getting to the playoff, any chance at the playoff. It cost him this year at any chance of even competing for a Pac-12 championship in their last year. James Martin, Keyshawn Boutte betting $500,000. What did he bet on, though? I don't remember. Here we go. Made over 1,000 bets on college sports while at LSU. I mean, is this all related to the prop betting? Is that what he was betting on, though, John? Or was he betting games as well? I knew he was betting. That's what I was trying to get a fix on why, because you had made the comment that because Louisiana didn't ban betting. They're still one of 37 states that has legalized betting, but they banned the prop betting part of it only. So if Butte was a big part of that, then is he? Let me see what I can find here. Was he doing that exclusively or primarily? Let's see what I can do here. Let you guys comment. So he'll be a great Patriots. Oh, so he was. I missed this whole story, man. It was what's happened when I was on vacation. Just got by me. Arrested on charges related to illegal online gambling. Accused of creating online betting account under a fictitious name. I wonder if the Patriots will cut him. His efforts led to more than $500,000 in winnings, with the vast majority of that money being used to place additional bets. He's currently listed on the roster. He played 5 games for the Patriots. By the way, he didn't contribute anything. This is interesting looking at some of this stuff. 17 wagers were made on NCAA football, which included wagers on LSU football between the dates of August 28th, 2022 to October 9th, 2023, which I'm going to say he was still on the football team. I get it, including one game where he bet on himself. So that will be a problem. According to the warrant, he deposited a total of $132,147 into the account. He won a total of $556,267, but used that money to make additional bets. He withdrew $50,000 from the account. Again, this is what sports is going to. This isn't going to be an isolated story. We've already had several. We had college baseball coaches in trouble last year. Again, Alabama and it involved Alabama and then an LSU game. I think it was the Alabama coach that was involved in that scandal. You've got Temple and also I can't remember the other. Their coach resigned because of it. Temple had some very odd line changes in their games this year twice. The games went from like 3-point favorites to 9-point favorites in the same day. Over-unders were fluctuating like crazy. I can't remember the other college betting. There was another college that there was a big scandal, and the coach resigned because of it. But if you're going to get in bed with these sites, these kids, you're not setting the right precedent. It's never going to go away because there's too much money involved. Yeah, and welcome to the show tonight, James, by the way. Good to have you with us. James obviously steps in on Northeast Streaming Sports on a lot of shows that I step in on, and I enjoy spending time with James. I don't know about Butte, though. What a knucklehead. I totally missed this story. I think USC fires Riley in the next 2 seasons. USC homers think I'm nuts. I don't think you're nuts. I'm certainly not a USC homer. And I can't see why USC fans would be in love with Lincoln Riley after watching what that defense has done the last 2 years. He fired Alec Grinch, but is Alec Grinch the big problem, or is Lincoln Riley? Because this problem was there at Oklahoma as well. We heard, and recruiting 4- and 5-star athletes for your defense is one thing. Getting them to play to that level is another. And Lincoln Riley, again, the Bucs got to stop with the head coach. You fired Alex Grinch. You don't have any cover left, Lincoln. So you either make it work and keep teams from scoring 40 points a game against you, including bad teams like Colorado, or you're going to not have a job. And I think the bloom is already coming off the rose. I'm not so sure these USC fans are as in love with Lincoln Riley as you might think, John. Hello, Ralph. Ralph Williams from RW Media, as we talked about on the top. With us, check out Ralph's stuff. Always some good stuff Ralph does, especially the Sports Corner, as I mentioned, which he does with Smoke and Jim Frazier every Tuesday from 4 to 6 Eastern time. So Ralph is picking North Carolina State in the Final Four. This would be a bigger upset than Jim Valvano's 83 Wolfpack team. Bigger upset, far bigger. And it's very interesting that the path they've taken is very, very close to what that team did. Great veteran backcourt on that team and Whittingham and Lowe. And, you had some good front court players like Thurl Bailey, obviously. And interesting team full of names we never heard of until 2 weeks ago. Temple, it was Al Golden. No, I'm talking about recently, before Al Golden, after Al Golden. This is the basketball team this year. There was some. They're still investigating at least 2 games that had some interesting fluctuation in the betting lines in one day. So, James, thank you. He won't be long for the Patriots organization. I cannot believe that Krafts are going to let this guy stay on this team. We'll see. And it's too bad because I thought he was a guy. I mean, Pop Douglas had a pretty good rookie season. Injuries would derail him, but he had some good games and he had some good moments. And I think there's potential there. I thought Booty had some really good potential, especially where they drafted him. They drafted these receivers middle of the draft, 6 and 7 rounds. 5th or 6th rounds, both of them, I think. Maybe both in the 6th round, that I think about it. And I thought there was some good upside there without a lot of risk. And now you got a guy who's nuts. And how does you can't police these kids all the time, right? But this is not going to be an isolated incident, I don't think. What do you got here, James? Yeah, I would agree. It's just the tip of the iceberg. I think, again, and this isn't just college sports. We've already seen it in the NFL. Now, those guys weren't betting on their own teams, we don't think. Calvin Ridley was the most visible guy, but Williams and a couple other guys from the Lions last year were suspended for either all or part of the year. And they simply were betting other sports, but doing it in the facility. These leagues, again, you're sending a mixed message to these guys. And every other commercial on the NCAA tournament, Major League Baseball, NFL, is for DraftKings or one of these betting sites. And, of course, they have their, if you have a gambling problem, call this number. It's too late by the time you get there, man. Chris, where is college basketball getting the most promotion? Anytime I hear a word of it, I hear about odds and spreads. And it's been that way for a long time. And again, I talk about them a lot too. I do. And again, I'm not trying to be a hypocrite. I place bets. But I'm not playing the sports. I'm not running the sports. And I talk about point spreads and whatnot, but it's not a betting show that we have. We talk about who we like, and I'll throw in who I like by how many points sometimes because I may have made a wager. But Chris and I have talked about this a couple of times now that kids are learning about sports through the betting sites. I talked about how when I was growing up, I learned about it because I'm old. On Sundays, my dad got the paper and you had a great sports section, and you looked at the batting averages and the home runs and the RBI leaders and sporting news. And then another generation had ESPN, and then we had the internet. Thank you, Al Gore. So that's a joke, John DeLon, please. And now you found out about it through betting sites because I can go and they're following guys and betting on their what they're going to do individually, game after game. Fantasy sports, right, has changed, and it's gambling. It's considered gambling, by the way. I can tell you because I can't go look at my fantasy team on my work computer because I get blocked because it's a gambling site, according to our software. Fantasy sports changed the way people, and not me. I do play fantasy sports. I do bet. But it has not changed the way I watch games. I enjoy games I don't bet on more than I enjoy games I bet on. I hardly ever, unless it's the only game on, like we get to the Final Four, I hardly ever watch a game I bet because I want to enjoy the game. I know it doesn't make sense, but that's what I do. The main problem with Riley is his ego. He always wants to be the smartest guy in the room, hence hanging on to Grinch until his job was in danger. John, again, we've done an awful lot of agreeing lately. I think Lincoln Riley's a good coach. He's got to get out of his own way, though. He's got to stop with what you said. He doesn't have to be the smartest guy in the room all the time. He obviously had to have known Alex Grinch was an issue. I mean, he was an issue before he brought him with him from Oklahoma. Should have been fired there. Then he should have been fired after the first year at USC. And I mean, this team would have been in the running for a national championship with any kind of defense 2 years ago. Last year there was other problems, but 2 years ago this team would have, with any kind of defense. They didn't have to have Georgia's defense. I mean, we see that in a lot of places, though, because offense, again, it's almost like the fantasy football of sports, right? Offense is what everybody sells, but defense is what wins. John, your LSU team has had tremendous offenses and no defense since their national championship season, I would say, and certainly since Coach Kelly got there. He does have good potential, but his mental capacity is low. Trying to remember who we're talking about. Oh, probably Butte still, right? James, I don't remember. Are you an LSU fan too? Have I got it? I'm going to guess you're not an SEC elitist, at least on the level of John DeLon, who really relishes the term, actually. It is simply too accessible. I can get right here in 2 seconds. I can be on DraftKings and I can put in, about $100,000 in wagers. Of course, I'd be looking for a place to live because my wife would divorce me, but I could do it very easily. Is there any way to bring back Jimmy the Greek? Remember when Jimmy the Greek, and I don't know, James and John, I don't remember how old you are. I think I know you're not as old as me. But if you're referencing Jimmy the Greek, you got to be of a certain age. You remember when they did the Jimmy the Greek segment on the NFL Today, which, by the way, all the pregame shows, that was the first one. And there's a great documentary. I want to say, I don't think it's an ESPN one. It might be on HBO or someplace. And I think it's called You're Looking. Oh, it's a book. No, I read a book. But there's also a documentary about the NFL Today. The first real pregame show with Brett Musburger, Phyllis George, Irv Cross, and Jimmy the Greek come on in the second season. And in his segment, they'd have the big board up and he'd have check marks, for quarterback, running back, and who had the edge. But the inside, what people didn't always know, except the gamblers, I was a kid. I didn't recognize this. And I found out about it in the book I read about it inside You're Looking Live, that the check marks were really about the spread. So if a team had 8 more check marks, the Greek had them an 8-point favorite. So wink, wink, for years, for decades, until just a couple of years ago, even on College Game Day, when Coach Corso would make little comments about close or big. He was telling you about the spread and who to bet. But now they can just say doesn't cover. They don't cover because now it's all legal. But for years, these pregame shows and the prognosticators would kind of skirt around that issue a little bit and have some really cute wink of the eyes. Pete Axtell might have been the first guy I remember actually really talking about spreads on NBC. And John, that's where I heard that joke first about the broken windshield, by the way, and having 2 more tickets to the game. And I thought you might be an LSU fan, James. Not that that's a bad thing, but John DeLon is the king of LSU fans and our number one SEC elitist. So I don't know. I don't think I'm going to be able to classify James in the same way as you, John, because I know that James knows there's good football being played elsewhere in the country outside of the SEC. At least I think he does. I did know purple. Good to have you with us tonight, James. John's 47. 47's kind of young to remember Jimmy the Greek, it seems. I'm 64. And hell, I was 14 years old probably when the NFL Today was at its peak. I mean, getting started maybe. I guess it went for a long time. Musburger and them were probably doing that show for a lot longer than I think. Chris says they did Jimmy the Greek on The Simpsons. Smooth Jimmy's Lock of the Week. I remember that. I do remember that. I didn't follow Simpsons. I did follow Simpsons early on a lot. I thought it was really smart. Really well done. I grew a bit tired of it, after 28 seasons or whatever, but they did some funny stuff, and that was one of the fun ones, Smooth Jimmy's. You do believe that you do believe that there's good football being played elsewhere. I just want to clarify, James. So there is good football being played elsewhere outside the SEC. Because, John, we know it's all or nothing. He's not biting tonight. Remember when Musburger would get excited when the over would hit? They did some, I have to tell you, Musburger and the Greek did not like each other. There's some great stories in this book, actually, about their battles on the air and off the air. They actually had a fist fight in a restaurant after a show one night. And the way Greek went down was, and it's another great 30 for 30 that ESPN does. I feel like, and I hate ESPN. As a Patriot fan, I hate ESPN. But they do a lot of great stuff. They've got a great 30 for 30 about Jimmy the Greek that is a must watch. John, if you have not seen it, you got to watch it. And I think the way Jimmy went out, he was older, he was drunk, and he said stupid crap that should never have been said and should never have hit the air. I feel like he kind of got sabotaged that day. I think I remember it too. The Greek was, I tell you what though, the Greek was a guy who built a brand. He was a nobody. He was a 2-bit gambler in Vegas, and he somehow sold himself to the networks, and he created this whole brand of the Greek out of nothing. It's a great 30 for 30. I'm pretty sure it's a 30 for 30. Go find it. It's really interesting to watch. Even if you don't know who he is, you'd find it interesting probably. Okay. James makes it clear there is good football being played out the SEC, provided SEC has been at the top for a while. They have, because and they'll probably stay at the top because of the money and the expansion, the realignment, if you will. The fact that Kirby Smart went to Georgia and put them over the top to be able to compete and probably surpass Alabama. The fact that LSU was able to put together a dream season under Ed Orgeron and Burrow, Joe Burrow. And the fact that league is really deep with teams that could win the championship. Now, with that said, I don't want to see this college football playoff dominated by SEC and Big Ten teams. We're getting towards the end of the show, so I can't get into a big, long, heated debate with John DeLon over this again. But I don't want a participation trophy tournament. I want teams that earn their way in. And if you win your league, then you've earned your way in. I will still advocate for 16 teams, 10 conference champions. Remember, there's only 10 leagues in Division I football, in FBS 1 football. There's not 32 like in basketball. There's 10. So you take all 10 and you got 6 at-larges, which ought to be plenty for the Big Ten and the SEC to divvy up, and Notre Dame. Then you got a real tournament with all conference champions and the other 6 best teams. Every sport's watered down their playoff. Baseball, football, the NFL, basketball and hockey are a joke. I was going to say something about, what was I going to say? Oh, Notre Dame. Notre Dame's AD thinks that they're in a stronger position than ever, by the way, being an independent. I don't see how they can be. Especially once the Big Ten, the SEC, or the SEC by itself just totally removes itself from the NCAA, Notre Dame's going to be left without a chair. The music's going to stop, and there's not going to be a chair for Notre Dame to sit in. I still think they have got to get conferenced up somehow, some way. I know they don't want to give up their independence because, all their money is theirs. Every bowl game, they go to a college football playoff, all that money is theirs. They don't have to split it with 15 other teams. If Alabama is the only SEC team in a playoff, they're splitting that money with 15 other teams. Now, Notre Dame's never got to do that, and that's what they want. But I don't know how they can have their cake and eat it too, because they're going to run out of paths to the playoff if they're not careful. Jeez. I agree with expanding college. I don't, I know John doesn't like the expansion at all. I'd like to see all the conference champions get a chance. You'll see, again, all the upsets will be early, and just like the basketball, or maybe it'll be like the women's tournament, and it'll be the higher seeds always win. But we'll see. How wild is that? Ed Orgeron, a guy who probably couldn't get a head coaching offer from an FCS team, as a natty. It is wild. I mean, that's one of the great. You talk about, feeling you're living in an alternate universe, right? I mean, everything had to come together. And by the way, how much of that was Ed Orgeron? How much of that was Joe Brady? I think it's Joe Brady, right? The offensive coordinator. Actually, I think he took over. If I'm not mistaken, you correct me if I'm wrong, John or James. Brady took over the play calling duties during the season, I think. So he wasn't officially the offensive coordinator, if I'm not mistaken. But yes, I mean, one of the great, I can't think of the word I'm trying to, outliers of all time. It's got to be Ed Orgeron winning a national championship. Can you think of another guy less likely to win a national championship than Ed Orgeron, who's actually won one? I'm trying to think off the top of my head of somebody out of the blue. Howard Schnellenberger, but even he was not Ed Orgeron, right? James, Notre Dame was the Dallas Cowboys of college football. Their greatness was highly attributed to exposure in NBC. Before that, though, I mean, Notre Dame was big long before NBC, and that's how they got NBC in the first place, right? Their brand was huge in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. And ABC or CBS would have them on constantly. And they were always in a New Year's Day bowl game when there was a handful of bowl games, right? When you only had 6, 7, 8 bowl games, tops. Notre Dame was always on New Year's Day. And that brand was made before NBC, but then NBC, I think, took it to another level. And ironically, they've only won that. I don't think they've won a national championship since NBC has had their affiliation with Notre Dame. The last one was 1987, I want to say, Lou Holtz. And they beat West Virginia in the Fiesta Bowl. I don't think I don't think they were affiliated with NBC yet. Liberty deserved to be in the playoffs last year. They got smoked by Ole Miss. I did. Yes. Again, and we got 5 minutes, John, so we can't get into a long debate. And you always throw Liberty out there. I'm saying every conference championship deserves to be in a playoff. Conference champion. You won your conference. And by the way, this will be a moot point because you guys at the SEC will be out on your own or with the Big Ten competing for your own little championship pretty soon, within the next 5 years. So you won't have to worry about it. And then maybe the rest of college football can get down to giving everybody a chance to play. Not everybody, every conference champion. And again, we'll carry this on. This is obviously not a conversation that's ever going to end, at least not for John and I, because Liberty won their championship, so this is not a participation trophy thing, right? Larry Coker, that's a good one. Larry Coker is a good one. Almost won two, Larry Coker. That's probably a better one than Howard Schnellenberger. But still, it doesn't have the same feel to it as Ed Orgeron, right? Because Ed Orgeron was just, that guy. You ever see a guy so happy when he got fired? Great, I'll take my, $50 million or whatever it was, and I'll go have fun, which he did. Lots of it. Cocaine and strippers. He's a walking cliche. Oh, I needed an interpreter. I did not understand a word he said at the time. Reminded me of his assistant coach in a water boy. That's a good one. That's a good. LSU doesn't get Burrow without Ed. Brady only called plays on 3rd and long. Is that at the start of the season? What happened as the season progressed is unclear. Okay. Fair enough. Not the offensive coordinator, though, right? And why? And I don't have a lot of time. I got to get off of here in like 2 minutes, 3 minutes. But if you can get it typed fast enough, John, why does Burrow go to LSU because of Orgeron? I don't know that story. So if you got it quickly, throw it up there. And I'll start to get ready to wrap it up here. We'll turn up a little bit of the background music. Thank you guys for participating today. We talked some NCAA basketball. We talked women, and I've done a little mea culpa because they're doing so well ratings wise. They're doing so well with total viewership. They're doing so well with the cost of tickets and attendance. I saw it here firsthand in Albany. And we talked some college football, which we'll probably be getting into more and more now as spring sessions will be getting started soon. If we ever get spring, we're going to get like a foot of snow tonight. But we'll be right here next week at 7 o'clock Eastern for the College Sports Huddle. We'll start talking some baseball as well, college baseball. You can also catch me on Are You Serious on Friday morning with the Mad New Yorker at 8:30. I'm sorry, 9 a.m. Eastern. And Sunday with the Stream of Consciousness. That is at 8:30 Eastern a.m. And also our Major League Baseball update Friday at 3 o'clock. Anyway, here's the answer. I know a guy who lives near 30A in Florida and sees Ed from time to time. Awesome. Is it? And again, we got to go. We'll pick it up. You answered a question, and you can put the comment in if you want. Am I right about the hookers and the cocaine? That seems to be Ed Orgeron today. Not sure. Keith Engle for TGI Sports Talks, college football, basketball, college sports huddle. We'll see you next time. Catch me in a half an hour with Sonia Pearson on Northeast Streaming Sports. See you guys later. Bye-bye.